G'day people. Today I'm going to be cooking one of the world's most best loved and most common dishes. I guess you could say that's the Western world. And that dish is a spaghetti bolognese. Now, spaghetti bolognese is a strange thing because what the rest of the world thinks is spaghetti bolognese is not what the Bolognese think it is. So I'm going to talk about that. Now, all kinds of things are done in the rest of the world, Australia, America, Europe, that are not what the traditional Bolognese recipe calls for. But what is the traditional Bolognese recipe? Well, different people in Italy have got different ideas, but probably the most authoritative is the Accademia Italiana della Cucina. And they specified, I think way back in 1982, they lodged a patent perhaps with the Bologna Chamber of Commerce, where they specify exactly what is Bolognese. And it's not even spaghetti, people, so in case you're wondering, it's actually called Ragù alla Bolognese. Or more specifically, I think it's Tagliatelle. Tagliatelle, they don't even say it in the title here, but yeah, they definitely call for Tagliatelle, not spaghetti. So there's number one difference between the rest of the world and the people whose dish they're trying to imitate. Now, some of the variants of the traditional Italian dish hardly have any tomato at all. This one, the Accademia Italiana della Cucina, they modified it last year. In 2023 they updated their recipe. So you can go to their website and download their official recipe. So if you want to make the real thing, go to their website like I did, download the PDF, print it out yourself. The main difference is they, and all of these northern Italian versions, they all start with a soffritto of onion, celery and carrot. Not necessarily a lot of it, but they start with it. It's the heart of the dish. But that's not the way it's done typically in Australia today. I mean, it's done by people who want to imitate the real thing, but it's not done by the rest of Australians. And I'm betting it's probably not done by most Americans. Anyway, that's the number one difference. The other thing is they do call for tomatoes here and also tomato paste, but not much. So I'm going to be using a 1 tin, 400 grams. They call for 200 grams. And they call for just 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. I'll be using a whole tub, which would be more like 4. So the Australian way is going to be a lot more tomatoey. They also use a broth or a stock to add liquid to the sauce. And they cook this for about 2 hours, which is a long time to cook. So it's really a very different process. They do use beef, but they call for skirt steak. They call for skirt steak if possible. So if you can't, well, so be it. But they like something from the forequarter, rich in collagen, so which is chuck or brisket. So really, you're not going to get that from a supermarket in Australia. You'd have to mince it yourself, or get them to mince it. Get a butcher shop to mince it if you're going to use brisket, or if you're going to use chuck, then you can make it from chuck. Anyway, because you're using the forequarter, it's going to be much more amenable to a long cook, and that's why it's called a ragu. But I'm not going to be doing that because that's not what Australians do. I'll tell you what else they say. they have permitted variants. You're allowed to put some pork in, so long as you've got at least 60% beef. So 50-50 of beef and pork is not really tolerable according to this mob. Oh yes, and they use, the other big thing is they call for pancetta, so 150 grams of pancetta. So if you want it to be authentic, you've really got to put that in. Now here's what they consider unacceptable. Unacceptable variants. The use of veal. Now, I've seen traditional variants from other Italian cooks calling for a 50-50 mix of veal and pork. So, you know, there's no real agreement, there's no total agreement between Italians on exactly what the Bolognese ragu is. You can't use smoked pancetta or bacon. You hear that? You can't use bacon. Bacon is not a substitute for pancetta. Can't use only pork. You can't use garlic. Can't use rosemary or other herbs and spices. Can't use flour as a thickening agent. Can't use brandy instead of wine. Oh yes, they do call for a glass of red wine. I'm not going to use red wine because I haven't got any in the house. I'm not a wine drinker. I like beer, so I'm not going to use it. But a lot of Australians would, so I think chucking in a glass of red, perfectly acceptable. Alright, that was that's the differences between the Australian version. Mind you, my version is just my version. Every Australian has got their own version. They'll have some slight difference, and there absolutely is there's no consensus, no clear consensus as to what is Australian Bolognese. So this is my version. This is as good as anyone else's in Australia. Let's check it out. Start with the tomatoes. Now, I've got a few tomatoes. My tomatoes in the garden are only just starting to come on. They're not properly there yet. So I'm just going to use a tin for the sake of this recipe. Hang on, let's get a spoon. Spoon, lift it up, pull the lid off. When you pull the lid off, make sure it's pushed firmly into the bench so you don't end up spraying tomatoes everywhere. It's weird the way technology's changed, you know, in the past few decades. Wasn't long ago, everything was a tin, you didn't have these quick pulls. No such thing. You had to use a can opener. It's not that long ago you had to use a can opener, but not anymore, you don't. You never see them anymore. Can openers are gone. Now, Annalisa, Italian tomatoes, not bad, not bad. I'm going to do a comparo when my tomatoes come on between Annalisa, Ardmona and fresh out of the garden. I'll do a comparo, but today's not the day. So I know I did denounce the Ardmona, so I'm going to check out what their latest version's like, but not today. Now, here's where my version is different to everyone else's. Anyone know what that is? Sodium bicarbonate, NaHCO3. Now, tomatoes are acidic, very acidic. And the way to deal with acidity, to neutralise acidity, It's not with sugar, it's with sodium bicarbonate. Or you could use sodium hydroxide, but if you can get hold of it. Sodium bicarbonate is a buffer. If you've done first year chem like I have, you'll know it's a buffer. The carbonate has hydrogen attached to it. It's also got a bit of a negative charge on it, so you can it can grab another hydrogen if necessary, or it can donate a hydrogen and just be left with carbonate, the carbonate ion. What this means is that sodium bicarbonate can be an acid or a base depending on the situation. If you put it in an acid, it'll neutralise it and bring it towards neutral. If it's in a base, it'll acidify it and bring it back towards neutral. Very useful. I'm going to try something. I'm going to try using my phone as a video camera to film what's going on in the pan. So let's try it. Oh God. Dual capture video, what the hell's that? Video, that's what we want. Let's go video. Alright, so when you put the sodium bicarbonate into the pan, it'll bubble. And that bubbling is the carbon dioxide being released when the acid is neutralised by the bicarbonate ion. Releases carbon dioxide. That's why you get all the bubbling. It's a good idea to do it, put the sodium bicarbonate in cold, because when it's hot it's a lot quicker. So you don't want to bubble it over. You don't want it bubbling over the side of the... Oh, hang on. That didn't work. You don't want it bubbling over the side of the pan. Alright. Well, that's fine. Just turn that down. It'll look after itself. Oh, cutting up an onion. Good. Cut up an onion. I better turn the heat on too. Oh, I can wait. Cut up an onion. How's that looking? Yeah, plenty of bubbles. Now the reason I'm doing that, neutralising the acid, is because I found that sometimes, I guess it depends on the quality of the meat, but sometimes the meat will just taste, once you put the tomato in it, the meat just smells wrong. Not off or anything, but just didn't smell right. So I started thinking, well, what is it that's causing that? Is it the quality of the meat? Is it the acidity of the tomatoes? What is it? So I started experimenting, and I tried out the bicarb soda, and lo and behold, it seemed to make a difference. Mind you, it's not the only thing that made a difference. The other thing that made a big difference was choosing a different brand of meat. I don't know if it's just me, but I found that Aldi mince, when I made bolognese sauce with it, just smelt wrong. And much as I'm not a fan of Woolworths, I did find that theirs wasn't as bad. Now, maybe it's just me that maybe it's the quality of the meat as well. Now you need quite a bit of oil. Like, you know, could probably at least 4 tablespoons. Always the case with any spaghetti sauce you make, you've got to coat the spaghetti, and the thing that coats the spaghetti is the fat. Fat coats spaghetti, so you've got to imagine that all the oil you put in has got to coat all the spaghetti you're going to ever cook with this particular batch, which might be quite a bit of spaghetti, you know. I mean, if you're probably making at least four or 5 servings, so you need enough oil to coat 4 or 5 servings of spaghetti. A fair bit of oil. There is some fat in the meat, of course, as well. But this is I'm using the 90% beef, 10% fat from Woolworths for this one. I did find that the quality of the meat makes a big difference. I even spent up and bought butcher's mince, you know, which is double the price. Double the price, but good, you know. It did taste better. So I guess it depends. Depends on the butcher and depends on your supermarket, but maybe the butcher's stuff is better. Now the other reason I'm cooking the tomatoes separately is I want it to reduce before I add it to the meat. This dish really comes into its own. There's not too much water. Now I'm going to ignore the Italian Academy of Cooking, and I'm going to put in rosemary, and I'm going to put in oregano. I mean, I'm not following their recipe anyway, so, well, I mean, there's similarities. There's similarities, but there's also differences. Quite a lot of differences, as I've pointed out. Now, I like chilli. Hang on. Before I do the chilli, I'll just mince up some garlic. Crush some garlic. So, it's a bit of a mystery to me why the Cooking Academy don't want you to put garlic in. I mean, they're Italian. What are they thinking? It's weird. The rest of the world. Who was it? Some Italian guy, was it? I think it was Stefano Di Pieri up in Mildura. Said, I don't know why, but always in Italian cooking, the garlic. And, you know, I would have thought that's true. But I guess the mob from Milan, the Accademia Italiana della Cucina da Milano, I guess they're northern and they don't necessarily agree with the rest of Italy. No, we don't want garlic and everything, bugger off. Mind you, they, this particular mob also do recipes, standard recipes of all sorts of Italian traditional dishes. And no doubt there's plenty of garlic in those. So I don't know. You'd have to research it further, I guess. Go, 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 go. Alright, some garlic. Chuck it in. Bring the onions. Onion's more or less done. Throw in the garlic. Throw in some chilli. Like I say, chilli's optional. Do what you like, but I like a bit of chilli. Not too much, so yeah, no more than a level teaspoon. And we don't want to turn it into spaghetti Mexicana. I burnt something. Should have been watching more carefully. Right. Throw in the meat. Throw in the meat. Chop it up. Just break it up. Break up the clumps. Break it up. Squish it down. Hang on, I might just video this. Break it up. Well, it's hard to do this one-handed. That'll do this. Too bloody difficult. Too difficult, mate. Trying to bloody do two jobs at once. Alright, so really as soon as it's broken up, it's time to stop. You don't want to fry that meat. Now we'll just take that off. Don't want to fry it. Now they're only little bits of meat in a mince, you know, little, it's a bit all ground up, so there's only little bits of meat, and it's very easy to overcook them. What we want to do is stew them. So, get a tub of triplo concentrato di pomodoro and chuck it in your tomatoes. If anyone's wondering what triplo concentrato di pomodoro is, if you go to Italy, they don't call it tomato paste. This stuff, they don't call it tomato paste, they call it triplo concentrato di pomodoro. So now you know. It's just Italian for tomato paste. Buon. So what does it taste like? It's alright. This is Legos. No label, but it's Legos. So how is it that a company that makes plastic building blocks for children also makes tomato paste? Please explain. Pauline Hanson, if you're listening, please explain. Now I'm just going to clean this. I'm going to clean this spoon. I'm going to clean the spoon because the Martian secret ingredient. Well, this is the second Martian secret ingredient. The bicarb soda was the first one. The second one is plum jam. Now, a lot of people call for sugar. Better than sugar is plum jam. Plum jam is perfect. You can can use blackberry jam or strawberry jam, but the plum jam is just right. It's very sweet. You don't put too much in, it's just a 1 heaped dessert spoon over the whole dish. It's very subtle, it's not a big thing, you know. Oh god, I got this out, I didn't even use it. Gold. Salt. So a couple of salt spoons. Couple of salt spoons. And so there we go. We've got 2 pots. One of them's got meat that's not quite cooked. The other one's got tomato paste, tomatoes that have been de-acidified by putting some bicarb soda in. Don't put too much bicarb soda in, by the way, because if you put too much in, it starts to taste like bicarb soda, which you don't want. But if you only put half a teaspoon, it'll be fine. Alright, now ideally you should probably just let the tomatoes reduce a bit more, but for the sake of this film clip, I'm just going to say that'll do. Put it in with the meat and then let it stew. Bring it to a simmer and let it simmer nice and slowly for an hour. Take out that stick that the herbs are attached to. I use fresh herbs. Fresh herbs are a bit nicer and not as strong as dried herbs. We'll stir it around, bring it up to temperature, and just let it go. Now, as I explained at the start, the original recipe calls for very slow cooking over 2 hours, and they ask you to keep adding stock or water as it gets too thick. But that's not the way it is in the Australian version. Australian Bolognese, you want it thick. You want it thick, it shouldn't run at all. There shouldn't be any noticeable runny component. Like it should be moist. It should be moist, but not runny. When you plonk it on top of the spaghetti, it should sit there. It should be red. It should have a strong flavour, delicious flavour, and it should be thick. One of the reasons it's got such a great flavour is that it's cooking in the fat rather than cooking in water. So in order to cook in the fat, you need to reduce the water until there's hardly any water. And you'll know when you get there. You'll know when you get there because the water will just start to disappear and you'll start to see the meat itself. That's what you want. You want to get to that point, and then another sprig. You want to get to that point and you want to turn the heat right down and just let it very gently bubble away. But you don't want to overcook it. Like I was saying, this is Woolworths mince. It's probably topside, and it's not going to benefit from really long cooking. Like the 4/4, 2 hours, great. You know, like cooking lamb shank or something, 4/4. But topside, no. So you don't want to cook it longer than an hour. Definitely stop. Yes, You don't want it cooking longer than an hour. Hang on, let's turn the fan off. Don't want to hear the sound of the fan. Yeah, so ideally you want to get rid of most of the water, nearly all the water, by half an hour, and just let it gently simmer for the other half hour with very little water. Now, when you know when you've got rid of the water, because when you scrape the spoon across the bottom of the pan, you'll see the bottom of the pan. I'll just video that. And you should be able to see the bottom of the pan should stay there for just a little while. If not permanently, it'll stay there for a little while. Here we go. Scrape the spoon across the bottom of the pan. You can see the bottom of the pan. That's what you want. You can see at the bottom of the pan there's not too much water. Right. So this is just about done. There's a pretty strong smell of rosemary coming out of it. It's fresh rosemary. I might have used one sprig too many, but anyway, that'll deaden down. One of the good things about a good bolognese sauce is it's better the next day. Just keeps getting better and better, really. Like lasagna. You make lasagna with a bolognese sauce, like we do in Australia. Although, if you're going to make lasagna, I put in double the tomatoes, because you need a lot more, and don't cook it so dry, because when you're making lasagna, the lasagna's got to take up the liquid, so you've got to have the liquid there for it to take up. That's why you need more tomato, and so you won't get quite the same flavour. Anyway, we're doing spaghetti bolognese Australiano here. Australian bolognese, because it certainly ain't the authentic Italian stuff. I've got 100 grams of pasta on there cooking, spaghetti. This is nearly done, so the pasta will be done in about 10 minutes or so. So I'll come back then and eat it. Okay folks, we're done. Spaghetti's cooked, just barely cooked, but it's cooked. And here's the sauce. Hang on, I'll get the, I shall film the sauce. You can see it's when you put the spoon along the bottom of the pan, it just stays exposed. It does not. There's not enough water there to really cover the pan. There it is. You see, it just sits on top of the spaghetti. It doesn't flow down the sides. It doesn't flow into the spaghetti. It just sits there. And that, my friends, is bolognese sauce Australiana. Or is it Australiano? There's the thing, perché gli spaghetti sono tanti, ma tanti è masculino, so i or gli, ma spaghetti Australiano, maybe if you're talking about the dish itself, it becomes singular. Interesting question. Anyway, let's have a taste. And also, yeah, it wouldn't be, you can't go from male to female, so it can't be Australiana, must be Australiano. See. Questo ragù, delizioso. Ci penso io. poco di Parmigiano, but it's not Parmigiano, it's Grana Padano, which is not quite the same thing, but it's nearly the same thing. It's nearly the same thing. So Grana Padano is made the same way, much the same way, but it comes from a slightly different location. So it comes from the Po Valley. And if you look at a map, the Po Valley, the Po River, runs to within about 20 kilometres north of Parma. About 20 k's. So, you know, it's awfully close. It's awfully close. All right, I'll just do another food porn. There we go, food porn. Ta-da. Oh, hang on. You got to remember to press the button for your food porn. All right, that'll do. That'll do for the food porn. So, if you've ever eaten spaghetti with Italians, the technique is you get a bit of spaghetti, you roll it around your fork using the spoon as a base. Classic. It's a classic. This is why it's eaten all over the Western world. It's just so damn good. And you know, as I say, in Australia, wouldn't be, I doubt there'd be a single Australian family that wouldn't make this quite often. They'll all have their own recipe. Now you can mix it up, or you can just leave it on top, you know. If you serve it on top, then it'll be up to the individual as to whether they want to mix it through or not. In the case of the original Tagliatelle al Bolognese, they do mix it through. But you know, you don't have to. The Australian one, you don't normally serve it like that, but you can mix it yourself. No problem. Anyway, it's really good. It's got a really strong taste of meat. The meat's not overcooked. It's tender, right? Don't cook it more than an hour, and don't cook it hard. Let it simmer for no more than an hour. Even less than an hour is fine. It's only minced. Don't overcook it. Tomatoes, not too acidic. Well, because I deacidified it with the sodium bicarbonate. I can't taste any sodium bicarbonate. There's plenty of salt in it. There's a hint of sweetness in there. Well, not too much. It's not obviously sweet, but it's a little bit there. Yeah, there's a garlic's there, but it's not overpowering. There's a little bit of a hint of chilli. I just put a level teaspoon of ground chilli, so not overpowering. Just a little background hint, just a little bit of spice. I mean, if you really want more, you put more in. A classic, honestly, an absolute classic. So this is how I do it. This is vaguely how Australians do it. Do it yourself, see what you think.